Have you ever felt instantly convinced by someone before that person even presented a single concrete fact? That feeling of standing before someone seemingly destined for greatness? An almost mythical figure whose story feels too good not to be true? Think about that meeting, that job interview, or even that casual conversation where someone's confidence simply overwhelmed you. What happens in our brain in those moments? And more importantly, what if that aura of genius is actually one of the most sophisticated tools of persuasion engineering, meticulously built to steer your most critical decisions? Let's travel to the heart of Silicon Valley, a place where myths are forged and fortunes appear overnight. This is where our protagonist emerges, Elizabeth Holmes. At 19, she decides to drop out of Stanford with a mission that bordered on the divine: to revolutionize medicine and free humanity from the suffering of disease. The narrative was flawless, almost cinematic. It was the story everyone wanted to hear, the legend the world was eager to believe. She wasn't just an entrepreneur, she was being positioned as the direct heir to tech's great titans. The name Steve Jobs echoed in every article and interview, and that association was no accident. It was the first step in a brilliant and dangerous influence strategy. Holmes understood a fundamental truth about human psychology. No one invests in an Excel sheet or a cold prototype. People invest in symbols. They connect with stories, with archetypes that resonate in our collective unconscious. And Elizabeth Holmes sculpted herself, piece by piece, into the perfect symbol of the visionary genius. She didn't just compare herself to Jobs. She became a carbon copy of him. She adopted a uniform, an unmistakable visual signature: the iconic black turtleneck. A simple choice loaded with overwhelming symbolic power. It was a visual message that shouted, "I belong to this pantheon of innovators. I am the continuation of this lineage." But the construction of this persona went far beyond the wardrobe. It went deeper, down to altering her very physiology. Holmes deliberately changed her voice. She forced a low, deep, steady baritone, a vocal register that psychological studies associate directly with authority, control, and credibility. It was a voice that did not waver, that showed no doubt, projecting an almost superhuman confidence. Have you experienced this? Spoken to someone whose cadence and tone conveyed unshakable certainty regardless of the content itself? This is a powerful tactic of strategic influence. It was all precise calculation, every detail a piece on the perception chessboard. What you are about to discover may surprise you, because this methodical construction was not about authenticity. It was about crafting an illusion so convincing that it would become reality in the minds of investors, scientists, and global leaders. She didn't need to prove she was a visionary genius. She only needed to look like one. For our primitive brain, trained for millennia to make fast decisions under pressure, what appears to be simply is. Stay with me, because next we will uncover the exact mechanism behind this technique, a concept from applied psychology known as archetype encoding. Think of it as a shortcut for the brain. Instead of spending time and energy analyzing every data point about a person to decide if they are trustworthy or brilliant, our brain looks for patterns, for symbols it already knows. The rebel genius archetype, popularized by figures like Steve Jobs, was already deeply coded in our culture. Holmes didn't need to invent a new story. She simply put on one that already existed and that all of us were psychologically prepared to accept. She offered the world a character that felt familiar, comfortable, and above all, inspiring. The black turtleneck, the deep voice, the Stanford dropout story were all codes. Signals our brain decodes in milliseconds to reach a simple, powerful conclusion. She's one of them. She's the next one. And at that moment, the battle for persuasion was already 90% won, before the technology was even questioned. I need to pause and connect with you here. The idea that we can be deeply influenced by a constructed persona is both unsettling and fascinating. Does it scare you? Does it intrigue you? Have you ever noticed how often good packaging has convinced you, whether in buying a product, choosing a leader, or believing a promise? If this resonates and sparks reflection, tell me in the comments what struck you most so far. Reading your experience turns this channel from a monologue into a conversation, and in that exchange we all grow. Your participation is the fuel that lets me keep diving into this research and bringing analyses like this. If this content is lighting a bulb and giving you new tools to understand the world, a like is the clearest signal that we're on the right path. It also helps YouTube deliver this message to more people who want to go beyond the surface. And if you want to keep going on this journey through the psychology of persuasion, consider subscribing. Your subscription builds our community and shows me there are people ready to uncover the next secrets of strategic influence. Our analysis of Elizabeth Holmes's mind is just beginning. Because once the archetype of the tech messiah was created and accepted, she had to feed it with something even more powerful than a well-built character. She had to sell a dream. And it wasn't just any dream. It was the most powerful promise there is: more time, more life. Once the symbol of the genius was solidified, the narrative needed an emotional engine, something that would turn seasoned, skeptical investors into true apostles of the cause. Elizabeth Holmes knew exactly which button to press. If you look behind the scenes of her pitches, the hidden truth is that she rarely dug into the technical details of her supposed invention. She didn't talk about engineering, chemistry, or mechanics. Her talk was about a different kind of transformation. She painted a picture, a vision. She spoke of a world where no one would have to say goodbye too soon to someone they loved. She wasn't selling a blood testing device. That would be small, mundane. She was selling salvation. She was selling the end of that cold fear we all have of the needle, the agonizing wait for a diagnosis, the uncertainty that gnaws at the soul. Her mindset was brilliant in that regard. She took the product out of the equation and replaced it with a universal, uncontrollable emotion. Her words were chosen to strike directly at the limbic system, the part of our brain that governs emotions, memories, and primal instincts. She bypassed the prefrontal cortex entirely, the seat of logic, critical thinking, and deliberation. Logic never stood a chance. It was a masterstroke in the psychology of persuasion. Let's go even deeper. Think about your own decision-making. How many of our most important choices, the ones that set our path, are ultimately driven by overwhelming emotion? The hope of a better future, the fear of missing an opportunity, the desire to belong to something bigger than ourselves. Holmes didn't discover this, but she weaponized this human truth like few in history. She created an emotional force field around Theranos. Questioning the technology was no longer a technical doubt, it was almost cynicism, a rejection of the very hope of a healthier future for humanity. She wasn't asking for your money, she was asking for your faith. And that is one of the most uncomfortable revelations of this case. When the right emotion is activated, facts become mere details. Her story became a cause, and people don't invest in companies, they join causes. That is the difference that conjured a $9 billion empire from nothing. If you recognize the power in that, write in the comments. Emotion sells. This ability to sell a vision was the second layer of her fortress. But even with a perfect persona and an irresistible dream, she needed a final shield to become untouchable. She needed validation from names no one in the world would dare question. This is where Holmes's persuasion journey enters its boldest, almost Machiavellian phase. She knew with striking clarity that her technology could not survive scrutiny from the scientific community. Real experts, biochemists, engineers, would ask the right questions and the ruse would be exposed. So what did she decide to do? Ignore them completely. Instead of seeking validation where technical truth mattered, she sought validation where the perception of power was everything. She built a human shield, a fortress of credibility, based not on science, but on reputation. One of the most striking revelations when we look behind the scenes at Theranos is the board she assembled. It didn't look like the board of a biotech company. It looked like a global superpower. George Shultz, former Secretary of State, one of the most respected figures in American politics. Henry Kissinger, a legend of diplomacy. William Perry, former Secretary of Defense. The mentality behind this choice was perversely brilliant. Holmes created a psychological dilemma for any investor, journalist, or would-be partner. The silent, devastating question hanging in the air was, If men who have run the United States and made decisions that shape the fate of the planet are staking their reputations and money on this, who are you to doubt it? Let's go even deeper. This is called social proof, but Holmes took it to a nuclear level. She didn't use customer testimonials. She used the moral and political authority of icons. We underestimate the effect this has on our decisions. Our brains are wired to follow the herd, especially when the herd is made up of leaders we admire or fear. It is a shortcut to trust. The credibility of those men was transferred to her, creating an armor that deflected hard questions. The hidden truth is that none of those board members had the technical expertise to validate Theranos' technology. But that didn't matter. Their presence wasn't about technical advice. It was a seal of approval, a beacon of power that intimidated and silenced dissent. This conversion of political power into scientific credibility was the masterstroke. She wasn't just selling a vision anymore. She was offering a seat in an exclusive club, validated by some of the most powerful figures on Earth. The invitation was almost irresistible. If you can see the force of that strategy, write in the comments. Power breeds power. With that wall of notables protecting her, she seemed invincible. But that external protection, however strong, still needed to be paired with an internal tactic that would generate irresistible pressure, a fear that would push even the skeptics to act. That tactic was secrecy itself. The Edison machine, supposedly the beating heart of the Theranos revolution, was treated like the Ark of the Covenant, locked away, inaccessible, shrouded in mystery. The official excuse was always the same. It was proprietary, it was in stealth mode, the technology was too disruptive to reveal. The hidden truth, which only surfaced years later, was that this secrecy did not exist to protect intellectual property. It existed to hide the fraud and to conceal the fact that the machine simply did not work. Psychologically, this strategy was devastatingly effective. By creating a veil of secrecy, she activated one of the most primal and powerful triggers in human decision-making: scarcity. What is rare, hidden, or exclusive instantly becomes more valuable in our eyes. The journey to become a Theranos partner was not an ordinary negotiation. It was a pilgrimage, a chance to peek behind the curtain. Giants like Walgreens and Safeway were convinced to sign $100 million contracts and build clinics inside their stores without ever seeing the technology validated independently. Why did they do it? Because of fear. But this was not ordinary fear. It was FOMO, the fear of missing out, the paralyzing anxiety of being left behind in the next great revolution. Holmes did not have to shout. She whispered into the ears of CEOs and investors, "This is the next Apple. This is the next Google. Do you really want to be remembered as the person who had the chance to get in early and said no?" That question echoed through corridors of power and wealth. She turned a business decision into a wager on legacy itself. The fear of omission, the fear of not acting, became far stronger than the fear of losing money. That imbalance completely distorts risk perception. The possibility of missing out on the deal of the decade felt more terrifying than the certainty of investing without proof. Secrecy and fear became the twin engines driving billion-dollar deals. If you have ever felt FOMO pushing you toward a decision, write in the comments, "Fear decides." This atmosphere of exclusivity and urgency created the perfect stage. But for the final strike, to close those deals face-to-face with the world's most powerful people, she needed a weapon even more subtle, operating at an almost unconscious level. That weapon was her body, her non-verbal communication. Behind closed doors, in boardrooms where multi-million-dollar decisions were made, Elizabeth Holmes's true performance took place. Archetypal design, emotional storytelling, and FOMO built the stage, but it was her physical presence that sealed the deal. If you watch her early interviews and depositions, you will notice something almost hypnotic. Her eyes. She held an unbroken, wide, direct gaze, almost without blinking. Psychologically, that is immensely powerful. Such intense eye contact can be read by the human brain in only two ways: as a sign of absolute confidence or as a sign of predation. Either way, it dominates. She used that gaze to control the room and to apply a constant, subtle pressure on her counterpart. Interrupting or challenging her became psychologically uncomfortable, almost an act of aggression. Without saying a word, she was transmitting, "I am in complete control of this situation and of myself. You are not." That mindset of total control was the nucleus of her persona. Combined with the deep, steady voice she had rehearsed and her measured, deliberate body language, she created what former employees and investors later described as a reality distortion field. Inside that bubble, her version of events seemed to be the only possible truth. Logic, doubts, and red flags all dissolved in the face of that focused presence. The hidden truth is that often it is not the argument that convinces us, but the force of conviction behind it. Holmes mastered the art of projecting conviction that felt as if it came from the center of the universe. That transformation of an environment through sheer presence was her secret weapon in one-on-one battles. If you believe non-verbal communication speaks louder than words, write in the comments, "The body speaks." Once she secured that initial yes inside her bubble of reality, another, even more dangerous psychological mechanism began to work in her favor, often without her having to lift another finger. This is one of the most chilling revelations of all. The moment when her victims' own minds became her greatest allies. Think of giants like the Walton family, founders of Walmart, or media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Once they poured hundreds of millions of dollars into Theranos, a fundamental shift happened in their psychology. Pulling out was no longer an option. It was no longer about money. It was about ego, reputation, and the public cost of admitting they had made a catastrophic mistake. The instant they said yes, they fell into one of the most powerful traps of the human mind: confirmation bias. From that moment on, they were no longer searching for objective truth about Theranos. Their brains began a frantic hunt for any shred of evidence, however flimsy, that could confirm their original decision had been right. It was like a drug. The hope that the technology might still be real became addictive, because the alternative, facing the shame of being duped, was unbearable. They clung to Holmes's words, to positive reports often fabricated, and actively ignored the warning signs. Senior employees resigning in protest were labeled as disgruntled or too weak to handle genius. Tough questions from experts were dismissed as jealous attacks from competitors. Negative reports were brushed off as mere bumps in the road of a revolutionary company. The human brain is a master storyteller, constantly rewriting reality to protect our self-image and past decisions. Those investors' minds were working overtime to defend our original bet. The hidden truth is that Holmes no longer had to persuade them daily. Their own brains were doing it for her. They were filtering reality to fit the story they needed to believe. The biggest fraud was no longer happening in the lab. It was happening inside their heads. They became guardians of a lie they did not even know existed, all to protect themselves from the pain of truth. If you have ever found yourself defending a bad decision just to avoid admitting you were wrong, write in the comments, "My mind fools me." That ecosystem of self-deception created an almost perfect echo chamber. But the real world outside that bubble could not be ignored forever. When the first serious cracks appeared, Theranos' strategy had to shift drastically from persuasion to pure intimidation. This was the moment when the mask of the benevolent visionary fell, revealing the cold and calculated face of desperation. While the inner world of Theranos thrived on hope and delusion, the outside world began to stir. The truth, stubborn as ever, started to leak through courageous people who could no longer stay silent, like Tyler Schultz, the grandson of board member George Schultz, and Erica Chung. And of course, through the relentless reporting of journalist John Carreyrou from the Wall Street Journal. Theranos' reaction to these first cracks reveals everything about its mindset. They did not respond with data, counter-evidence, or transparency. They responded with lawyers. Specifically with the most feared attorney in America at the time, David Boies, the same man who represented the US government against Microsoft. Persuasion gave way to scorched earth policy. The message was no longer a promise of transformation, it was a threat. The order was simple: destroy anyone who speaks. What followed was a brutal campaign of intimidation, lawsuits worth millions, private surveillance, and pressure on families. Psychologically, it was paralyzing. They were not just fighting whistleblowers in court, they were turning each one into an example. The unspoken message to every employee was chillingly clear. Look what happened to them. Speak, and we will ruin you. We will drain your savings, smear your name, and make sure you never work in this industry again. Fear, once used subtly to fuel ambition and FOMO, was now an open weapon of coercion. It became company policy, as powerful as any promise of a better future. And for a while, it worked. Many stayed silent, terrified of the consequences. The truth was contained not by the strength of arguments, but by the strength of fear. When a narrative is fragile, the only way to sustain it is by silencing every other voice. If you believe intimidation is the last refuge of those without truth on their side, write in the comments. Truth hurts. That extreme reaction, that ferocious attack on anyone daring to bring reality back into the story, says everything about the desperation behind the operation. But it also reveals a deeper lesson about how all of us behave under pressure. The entire rise and fall of Theranos can be seen as a vast psychological laboratory, a case study on the fragility of the human mind when exposed to a coordinated storm of emotional triggers. The world Elizabeth Holmes built was not accidental. It was a perfectly calibrated cauldron. On one side, the overwhelming hope of a medical revolution. On the other, the paralyzing fear of missing the next big thing. In between, a cult of secrecy that bred unbearable curiosity, and a wall of elite social proof that silenced common sense. This was the perfect environment for critical thinking to collapse. It was an expensive masterclass on how our brain makes terrible decisions under pressure. The deeper truth behind the entire case is not about technology or finance. It is about neuroscience. When we are subjected to that level of emotional pressure, whether positive like hope or negative like fear, a battle unfolds inside our head. The prefrontal cortex, the evolved part of the brain responsible for logic, risk assessment, and long-term thinking, begins to lose ground. It literally shuts down under the dominance of the limbic system, the primitive brain that governs emotion and survival instincts. The limbic system does not care about spreadsheets or data. It cares about immediate reward, avoiding pain, and the comfort of belonging to the group. Holmes, with surgical precision, spoke directly to that part of the brain. The result was total psychological capture. Decisions stopped being rational and became reactive. That is why the most important lesson from this saga is actually a defensive one. It is an alarm. That intense sense of urgency, that tightening in the chest pushing you to decide immediately, is the biggest red flag there is. If someone is rushing you to act without giving you time and access to facts, that person is not offering you the opportunity of a lifetime. They are exploiting a flaw in your operating system. They are using your own biology against you. Pressure is the best friend of manipulation. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward making better decisions. If you have ever made a bad decision because of the heat of the moment, write in the comments. Pressure blinds. Understanding this trap is essential for self-protection. But what if we could go further? What if we could use the same knowledge, not to manipulate, but to influence positively and ethically? Here is where the story turns. This journey through the darker side of persuasion is not only a warning, it is also a map. We can reverse engineer Holmes's tactics to build mental armor and at the same time become more ethical and effective communicators. The first transformation begins with authority. Instead of accepting it blindly, as those investors did with their prestigious board of advisors, start questioning authority with respect. Respect expertise, but never place it above evidence. Develop the habit of asking, what is the primary source of this information? Where are the data supporting this claim? That small change in posture creates a powerful filter against undue influence. The second step is to become a translator of emotion into logic. When you face a grand vision or a persuasive promise that stirs your emotions, as Holmes's dream did to the world, pause. Admire the beauty of the vision, then force yourself to ask, that sounds wonderful, but how does it actually work? Show me the process, show me the proof. The ability to separate emotional impact from practical viability is essential for making smarter choices. Now, let's revisit the lesson of social proof, that human shield of powerful names. The key insight here is about quality, not quantity. Be suspicious of unanimous support from people outside the relevant field. If politicians, generals, or celebrities are endorsing a scientific claim, it is not social proof, it is marketing. True social proof comes from experts within the discipline itself. Finally, the most important mental shift of all, embrace JOMO, the joy of missing out. Holmes weaponized FOMO, the fear of missing out, to create artificial urgency. Your defense is to find peace in deliberate decision-making, even if that means staying out of the next big thing. The calm satisfaction of avoiding a bad deal or a manipulative offer is infinitely more valuable than the anxiety of chasing every opportunity. This is the real transformation. Trading reactivity for proactivity, trading fear for calm. Applying these filters will not make you cynical, it will make you wiser and more centered. If you are ready to take command of your decisions, write in the comments, "I am in control." With this new mindset and these tools, we become stronger. Yet every story needs an ending, and the final verdict of the Theranos saga delivers the ultimate lesson about truth itself. In the end, there is one adversary that no persuasion technique, no influence engineering, and no narrative, no matter how brilliant, can defeat: reality. Physics and biology do not care about charisma or reputation. The laws of nature are immune to storytelling. The truth that had been hiding in plain sight all along was brutally simple: the technology did not work. And once that truth came to light, everything else, the $9 billion empire, the myth, the illusion, collapsed instantly. The fall was as spectacular and swift as the rise. The damage went far beyond lost fortunes. It shattered public trust in the Silicon Valley promise of disruption and salvation. Elizabeth Holmes, the self-declared messiah of technology and the supposed heir to Steve Jobs, ended her journey not on a stage being applauded, but in a courtroom being sentenced for fraud and conspiracy. The heroine became a convict. That final transformation forces us to look at the entire story from a new angle. Her legacy is not about a blood testing machine, it is a warning, a mirror. The Theranos case is a definitive study of human suggestibility, our hunger for miracles, and the ease with which our minds can be hijacked by compelling stories. Which brings us to the most important question of all, one that is not about Holmes, but about us. The question that truly matters is this: where in your own life, right now, are you believing a story that is simply too beautiful to be true? It could be in a relationship, a career promise, an investment, or even a political ideology. Every one of us has our own personal Theranos, a story so appealing that it blinds us to inconvenient truths. If you agree that in the end reality always wins, write in the comments, "Truth prevails." This is the reflection I want to leave you with. Where is your Theranos? In what area of your life might a powerful narrative be hiding an uncomfortable truth? Asking yourself that question honestly is the real transformation this story offers. That is what protects you. If this journey made sense to you and you stayed with me until the end, leave a comment below with the phrase, "Together until the end." It will be amazing to see who among us has taken this full ride of reflection and awareness. If at any moment you felt that spark of clarity, that aha moment, leaving a like is the simplest and most genuine way to let me know. It shows that this conversation resonated with you and that it was worth the time we spent together. This channel exists for exactly that, to keep exploring the hidden forces behind human behavior, persuasion, and decision-making. If this kind of analysis strengthens and equips you, subscribe so we can continue this journey side by side. And remember, our conversation does not have to end here. The video appearing right next to this one is the perfect continuation of what we explored today. Click there and let's keep this dialogue going. See you there.